I'm David Lee, and this is the MSS Business Transformation Podcast. Today is a very special podcast because we have the nominees here for our Business Transformation Leader Awards. We are sponsoring, and we created an award for the Governor's Celebration of Innovation here in Arizona, and these are the nominees. And what was interesting is I was a part of the selection process, and everybody who came in and into that process were pretty unanimous that these were the nominees. So we got some very special people here who have led change and transformation in their community. Before we get going, you can find us on MSSBTA.com and at our institute on MSSBTI.com. You can find us on Twitter and on LinkedIn. So I'm going to just start off by going around the room and having our folks introduce themselves. We're going to start with Angel Medflight. We have two of our members there. Paul, do you want to start and just give an introduction of who you are and what you do?
I'm Paul Grein. I am with Angel Medflight, previously the CIO, now the Chief Development Officer, so CDO. I've been with Angel Medflight since March of 2014, and I've pretty much been in IT since 1998. I was the CIO of a public company prior to coming to Angel Medflight.
Okay, and you have a partner in crime. You are dual nominees. So Andrew, you want to talk a little bit about your background?
Sure. My name is Andrew Best. I'm the President and Chief Operating Officer for Angel Medflight. Prior to Angel Medflight, I worked in the healthcare consulting space, in acute care primarily, and visited hospitals around the country, whether it's faith-based, not-for-profit, for-profit, or county-based hospital systems, around the operations and finance consulting spectrum. And after that, I came to Angel Medflight for December of 2014 is when I came in.
Great. And on my left, which you can't see because this is a podcast, but I have one of my favorite interviewees from the past. Deb, I know Dr. Trenchell is the nominee, but you're the one who made the drive up here to be with us, and I'm very glad you did because I know for a fact that a lot of this is driven by your efforts. So you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name is Deb Aders. I am the Vice President of Patient Care Services and the Chief Nursing Officer at Yuma Regional Medical Center. I have been at Yuma for about 8 years and in this position for about 4. I am originally from Indiana. I'm a nurse, and I always say 40 plus years nursing, and we'll just kind of leave it at that. We don't need to go any further. So I'm very honored to be here to represent Dr. Trenchell.
Very good. And next to you, we have Kathy from Northwest Connect. You want to introduce yourself? Northwest Valley Connect. You want to introduce yourself to us?
Good morning. I'm Catherine Chandler. I'm the Executive Director for Northwest Valley Connect. I have been since the founding of the organization. It is a nonprofit that helps seniors, veterans, and persons with disabilities with transportation in the Northwest, actually in the West Valley. I've been in transportation for 20 years, so I have a background and have a passion for helping seniors who all of a sudden can't or shouldn't be driving find a solution to get where they need to go.
Very good. So just so you know, my grandmother's 106, and she didn't stop driving until she was about 100. So you know, our views on
Ouch.
that. Tim, you are coming to us from Walbar. You want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name's Tim Grein. I've been the president and CEO of Walbar Engine Components for about 3 years since my partners and I took it private as an independent company. For the last 20 years, I've been doing operations and investing in aerospace and manufacturing companies generally. The last 3 years has pretty much been the highlight of that last 20. So.
Oh, good. So each of these groups has done an amazing job transforming their companies, and they have different stories to tell. We could do a podcast on each of you. Fortunately, we get to have you all together, but it means that we're going to have to turn this into a discussion. So if you guys want to ask questions of each other, that's okay in this process too. And part of this is so people can learn from each other. So if you hear something that somebody's describing and you have a question, speak up and let's break down into a discussion if that's what's necessary. Let's start over here with Angel Medflight. Tell us a little bit about what you were doing. I see your transformation as kind of a continuous improvement process, but can you tell us a little bit about that and maybe give 1 or 2 examples of what has come out of that from your change?
Yeah, sure. So maybe I can tell you all what Angel Medflight is first. So Angel Medflight is a fixed wing air ambulance provider. What that means is we fly jets from generally hospitals to another hospital, our average distance is about 1,000 miles, so we are flying across state lines, generally taking patients to the higher level of care. So they might be a snowbird in Arizona needing to get back to the Midwest, or they might be a patient that needs specialized multidisciplinary rehab, or they might need surgery, or even a life-saving organ that became available in another particular state. So that's Angel MedFlight. One of the key areas that Paul and I worked on is making sure that our team found a way to continuously innovate in a space that is highly regulated across aviation and healthcare. And so for us, it was how do we leverage technology to get information, specifically medical records and patient decision-making, in the hands of our clinicians who are at 40,000 feet. And so Paul and his team led an initiative to build an iPad application and be able to talk between different apps to simultaneously bring medical records to our clinicians, make the right decisions in the right time, so we can focus rather on patient charting, but more on patient care.
Very good. And I understand that there was and I got an example of a patient that was from Mexico. Do you know what I'm talking about there? Can you give me a little bit more about that one?
Yes, I think it's actually coming out of Turks and Caicos.
Was it Turks and Caicos?
Turks and
Okay, I'm
Caicos. One of the big challenges that we have is, in our previous model, if we had a patient that we needed to fly, the way that had to be done is multiple phone calls, emailing, things like that, giving the medical records in advance so that you could say, oh, okay, I know exactly what I'm expecting as the clinician when I arrive. Because the last thing you want to have happen is the clinician is surprised by whatever that medical situation is. In the case of the Turks and Caicos, one of the big things that Angel MedFlight is known for is our logistics. We have a phenomenal logistics department, and therefore we're able to do things like the transplant services. But in the case of Turks and Caicos, we actually had an aircraft in the air en route for a patient in Florida, but we got a phone call that we had a patient in Turks and Caicos that needed to be immediately evac'd out. And for us, we were able to get all those medical records and everything that were necessary. Those, as we save what we call a flight profile within our Salesforce, all that information is automatically going to be on the iPad. So our crew, while in flight, was able to understand all the information about that patient, what was needed, everything like that. No phone calls had to happen. The aircraft en route to Turks and Caicos, we dispatched another aircraft for the other patient. During that time that they were en route to Turks and Caicos, they were able to land and know everything they needed to know about the patient, have all of the clinical information that they needed, so they were able to immediately retrieve him from the facility that he was at in Turks and Caicos and get him back here to the United States, into Florida, so that he could have immediate surgery or emergency surgery from his clinical situation. And it's things like that where we couldn't do that if we didn't have this digital transformation. There was no way to be able to reroute an aircraft in flight and make sure that when that crew landed, they had all of the information that they were going to need to be able to help that patient out.
It's a fantastic example, and we're going to come back to it and talk about some of the challenges of digital transformation, but now I want to move over to Yuma Regional Medical Center. And Dr. Trenchel, I had a chance to talk to him a little bit, and he described your change as a cultural transformation. So tell us a little bit about the medical center and how you did a cultural transformation of the organization. So
Yuma Regional Medical Center, we are a sole community hospital in Yuma, Arizona. So we're 406 beds. We're fully serviced. The only service we don't do is neurosurgery or transplant. Otherwise, we provide all services. We are 20 miles north of Mexico. We are 10 miles east of California. So we get to see a lot of interesting things, especially coming across the border. The big culture change for us was moving from, even though we're small, is to providing services for all of our patients, no matter what the need is. And we had to change the employee culture of being afraid to take risk, being afraid to make a decision. Dr. Trenchel was really instrumental when he first came in just saying, sunlight is the best disinfectant. We have to shine light on everything, and you as the staff are the ones we need to empower to tell us what we need to do. So we really were able to move, and we adopted the Baldrige model. We adopted the whole process improvement. We adopted lean. We were able to empower staff from before, when we were coming, before he started, we were having maybe 15, I just used the number 15, A3 projects, if you know what lean projects are. This last fiscal year, we did 750. So we were able to make a huge change, and they're all powered by staff. So we have what we call Innovation Day. So this is our second year of Innovation Day. The staff get to present to the board of directors their projects. So we've had 75 so far presentations. Today was the final day to submit. So we're like, I don't know how many we're going to get, but we're up to 75. So they're pretty excited. So it was a whole change to watch staff. Staff have smiled. They feel empowered. They feel it's okay to take a risk, and it's okay to speak up if there's an issue or concern. Because we are here for our patients, and our staff have to feel the same way.
Very good. So now, Kathy, you described what Northwest Valley Connect had to go through was a community transformation. Can you tell us what you mean by that?
Well, what I mean by that is Northwest Valley Connect was started because there was a need in the area. If you think about the grid of public transportation in Phoenix, the light rail, and there's much more, that stops at Sun City. So Sun City West have about 65,000 people. There's 140,000 in Surprise. There are no buses. There certainly isn't light rail. So there's really a limited amount of public transportation in those areas. So what Northwest Valley Connect was developed to do is find some solutions. And in doing that, we needed to bring the community along. We needed to educate and advocate for public transportation and make sure the whole community knew about the more quiet, frail people in the community who weren't really getting heard. So Northwest Valley Connect picked up that model of trying to find solutions ourselves with a volunteer program. We have about 130 volunteers. We started with the call center, volunteers answering the phone and finding solutions for the caller. We had 288 calls in that first year. In 2014, we're going to hit 16,000 this year, more than 16,000 this year. So it's grown tremendously. Then we started a volunteer driver program. These are volunteers driving their own vehicles in most cases. In some cases, we have accessible vehicles, and they're driving people in wheelchairs who need the rides also. So bringing those solutions along with the education and the community advocacy is changing the culture of this community to be more of a transportation-related culture.
And when I called you and told you about the nomination, it had been the community that nominated you and the organization for this award. You were a bit surprised, so I think that's a great sign that the community actually recognizes the work that you've done and the transformation you've made. Now, Tim, you were in a really tough position. Based on the description I had, you had a company that had been, it was in a pretty distressed position, and then you had to recover from that. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So about 3 years ago, my partners and I acquired Walbar Engine Components from United Technologies, and it was in a pretty horrible position at the time. In the 4 years preceding our ownership, revenue had declined from about 80 million to about 50 million. Quality performance was dismal. Delivery performance was really awful. Customer confidence was at an all-time low, and most customers were actually terminating their long-term agreements and walking away. United Technologies just wanted out. So I think, fortunately, they entrusted us to take over the reins. And we were excited about this opportunity because what Walbar does is we make turbine engine components for commercial aerospace engines. And I know a fair amount about the industry. There aren't many independent companies that do that. There's a lot of companies that are, most of the engine OEMs themselves do some of what we do. Some of the independent companies that make parts also compete against the engine OEMs. So we thought if we could restore the performance, we thought there'd be a great opportunity, to stabilize the business and grow. And fortunately, that's what we did. We went in there from the beginning, tried to capitalize the business for success in the beginning with no debt. We were able to kind of bring calm back to the company first, and then the customer second. And since then, it's been a pretty good, a pretty dramatic transformation.
Great recovery. So each of you described a transformation, and when you hear how you described it, it all sounds very idyllic, very very easy to do, right? Was this easy for you? I have a feeling it wasn't. So let's talk a little bit about what were some of the challenges to what you did. Let's start with Angel Medflight. What were some of the key challenges that you face in making the changes that you did?
So first off, change is hard. I don't think anyone can agree that change is easy, especially with us. We're very similar to you, Tim, where in June of 2014, we acquired the company, and we had a lot of what I would imagine is change fatigue from old regime moving into a new regime. And so for us, we had a lot of trust building that we needed to do. So even though I think Paul and his team get recognized for what we did last year, this is years in the making. And so these types of instances, we're building trust with our associates from soup to nuts across all the departments. And so we really had to make sure that we led by example, and we needed to make sure that associate morale was high. We needed to put in the right proper incentives to make sure that the company incentive matched the employee incentive, and even more so that our mission, vision, and values trickled down across all the departments. And so a lot of the things that we did started many years ago, where we started focusing on our patients and then focusing on our employees. There's a lot of literature out there that says if you focus on your internal stakeholders, your external stakeholders or your customers will benefit. And so we've tried to live by that mantra, and Paul and his team have been instrumental in leading that change. So it wasn't easy for us. It was more so over the years that we've really invested into our people to allow us to invest into our patients and advocate for them on our behalf.
Now you described a lot of what you did as a digital transformation.
Sure.
How did you do that, and more importantly, was there any resistance that you experienced along the way?
Yeah, much like what Deb did, we had to get employee buy-in. So for us, the first thing we did was we kind of started talking about what we wanted to do. We were in a situation where a lot of the employees were afraid to speak up, tell us what they were feeling, what they needed, what they wanted. So we kind of started our digital transformation by cheating a little bit. We had to build a new office space, and during that office space move, we said, what are your needs and what are your wants? Give us a list. Didn't matter what it was. If you wanted a Ferrari, put it on the paper. You're not going to get it, but you put it on the paper. So during that process, it kind of opened up everybody to be able to say whatever you wanted, you could put down. So during our digital transformation, we really sat down with the two key departments that we're going to change the most, because you had to fundamentally change the way that they were used to working. And how do you fundamentally change the way that somebody is used to working if you don't let them have a little bit of ownership in the change? So that ownership came immediately from us having those conversations, saying, what do you like about the product you're using now? What do you like about your job that you're doing now? What don't you like? How hard is it for you to do this? Why does it take you so much time to do this? Why do I see that you send an email, a fax, and a phone call for one task? And then just getting them to explain that to us, and so we would have a much better understanding of why they were doing what they were doing and how hard it was for them to do certain tasks. And it turned out that it wasn't that some of those tasks were inherently hard, it's that they were trained a certain way and they didn't know any better. And so then it was like, okay, now that we've got this whole list of things that are not necessarily broken, but we know that we can change, and then how do you take that whole entire list and put it into something that's a plan? And then we worked out a plan. Then we met with more stakeholders after that and said, okay, this is our plan. This is what we want to do. What do you guys think about this? And then let them make comments on that. One of the things that's really hard, and I think for any organization, is people fundamentally don't know a lot about technology. And so you kind of have to take what they're telling you, turn that into something that you can, affect change within technology, and then say, this is what you said you wanted, this is what we can offer you, and then let them, break that piece, that piece of it down into whatever that final outcome would be. So it was really challenging to make sure that everybody had buy-in and everybody had a little bit of piece of themselves in our final product, and they do. I mean, it's amazing how our clinical staff is very well tenured. I don't know what the average lifespan of one of our clinicians is. It's at least 4 years, something like that. I mean, they're very well tenured, and so making sure that they were going to have a lot of buy-in and then be able to move that forward was extremely important.
So now I know you describing it as a cultural transformation. You're changing people in the way they behave. You introduced the Baldrige framework, so I imagine it went perfectly smoothly for you as well.
Oh, that would have been really nice if it had. There was a lot of mistrust. There was a lot of, okay, here's the next flavor of the month. Now what are you going to try to do? So we had to actually kind of start all the way from the beginning and go all the way down to why is there so much mistrust? And it was a lot about the culture was all about blame and not about allowing people to take risk. So we had to come up with, well, why are we all here? You know, we're all here to take care of patients, and we should understand, you know, we need to understand what that means to everyone. I like to say people got into healthcare for a reason. I'm a nurse, so I always say it's a calling to become a nurse. It's not a job. So why is it at a nurse level do you feel that you cannot take a risk, empower, and speak up for your patients? So we had to do a lot of building of trust, a lot of focus groups we did to try to understand. We had to allow them to help drive the change, and a lot of us, they don't quite understand, they didn't have the skill sets. We had employees there, so we have everyone from millennials to baby boomers. So you have a wide spread of people who have no technology, who have, that's all they do is technology, right? They, you know, they live on their cell phones, and we're like, we can't, you know, what are you doing? So there's multiple things we had to do, but besides change is hard, it's also very personal. You know, you have to be willing to change, and you have to be willing to find that utmost reasons to why to change. So when we started putting patients at first and supporting them making decisions and giving them tools and a lot of educational tools and opportunities, so we actually began to see some of the difference. But it did take time, and we're still changing. You know, we had to come up with that one balanced scorecard that they all felt that they owned. And they all employees from every department of the facility owned a piece of that scorecard. So they were very proud of their number, of their score, or their number, or what that meant to them. So we had to build off of that, and then we trained on baldridge. We trained on how it's important that we all work together. We have to engage staff. And I can tell you, I don't think it was the employees that were the most difficult to engage. I think it was the physicians that were the most difficult to engage, because, you know, in healthcare, as you were saying, this is how we've done it, this is how I was trained. These concepts were just kind of blowing some of them out of the water. So they're like, well,
And baldridge is a pretty comprehensive framework. It doesn't say, you know, just do this, just do that. It's end-to-end change, yeah?
It is end-to-end change, from who are you, all the way from your operations to your customers to your workforce to what are your metrics, how do you measure, what do you know is good, what is leadership, what is your strategic planning, and then prove it. You know, so you got to show that what you start out at the beginning works through every level of the organization. So it's been a rocky road, but it's been actually very exhilarating to watch it grow.
And it's hard not to change people who are in your organization, that you have some ability to affect their behavior and stuff, but to change a community, there's got to be some unique challenges in that space. Right, Kathy?
Yeah. The organization was easy to deal with change, because when I first started, I mean, we haven't stopped changing. We continue to add more programs. Anybody who's been with the organization from the beginning, and I still have my first call center operator and 2 of my 3 first drivers are still with me today after 5 years. So those people all know that we're always going to change and grow and do more things. And they're up for it because they see the need in the community. In the community, we've gone to the fire departments and said, you know, you have frequent flyers on your ambulances. If you connect those people with us and we're taking them to doctors, they're not having to go to the emergency room as much, right? So we're doing those partnerships, and building those partnerships hasn't been very easy. We also go to our elected officials and the legislators and senators in our districts and work with them also, so they know what the need is and they can see, because our biggest challenge has been funding, because transportation is, to most people, they think that's a government issue, and government funds transportation, and they don't completely fund transportation. And especially for a nonprofit, it's tough to get that. And then foundations are, because of the publicness of transportation, it's been a lot of advocacy and education to get foundations to fund also.
Tim, I got to imagine that when you come out into the situation you're in, that the employees in your company have a sense of where they are, so you have to keep them motivated to move forward. Was that a challenge for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, starting right out of the gates, this transaction was unusual because we were not allowed to meet any of the employees or talk to any of the customers before the day we owned it. So you can imagine the uncertainty that existed at the company on Monday morning when I showed up to give my presentation to say we're the new owners. And that's where we started to change the culture and change the climate from the beginning, because we've been incredibly transparent. And remember the first meeting, and this is the same message I delivered to the employees and the customers from day one. We said there's only 3 things that are important to the success and survival of Walbar. Employees first. We're not going to make any changes that compromise employee morale, safety, and health. And we said second, because our parts are important to the successful operations of airplanes, we're going to be 100% quality and 100% on-time delivery. If we do those 3 things right, everything else will work out. And people started to, pay attention. They realized we weren't just in here to take their 401k and fire people, which was never the plan. And then from there, we needed to create kind of a complete sense of awareness, because to be honest, a small subsidiary of a large public company doesn't have a lot of information. All they had heard for years was, again, this was a $50 million, subsidiary of a $6 billion public company. The people down, and the plant was in Mexico, by the way. So the people in the plant in Mexico only had, heard rumors about how poorly the business was doing. So that's the second page I put up on the presentation. I said, the good news is, we're not part of UTC any longer. The bad news is we're on our own. And this is the financial snapshot of how the company is doing. And I said, the good news is, in the last 12 months before we owned the company, the business lost about $4 million of profit. And I said, the good news is, we scrapped $4.5 million of parts. So I need everybody to pay attention, because all we have to do is stop scrapping parts, and we could guarantee the survival of Walbar. So people started to pay attention. We have never deviated from that. We've continued to say there's only 3 things that are important: employee health and safety, quality and delivery. If we do those things right, things will go well. And we've been transparent with the workforce. We've showed them along the way how the company's been progressing, how they individually can contribute. And we slowly crept toward having what I would define as a performance-driven culture. We actually, after about a year, when everybody was trusting us, we were trusting them, we understood the metrics, we had good data, we actually implemented employee-specific scorecards that measure things the employee does that could impact financial performance, and it's productivity, efficiency, scrap, right first time, and some others. And we actually bonus monthly based on that. But more importantly, it started to create a culture environment that people that don't want to be measured leave, and people that submit resumes for a new job are excited about being measured. Our headcount's up about 20% from when we took over, so it's been a pretty good story. Our revenue's up about 60% from back then. The workforce is engaged, and that's probably been the most exciting thing, most exciting aspect of the whole environment and transaction for me.
So in the brief few minutes I got to know any of you at all here, I noticed that there's different personalities in the room, and you're all here because of the fact that you demonstrated leadership and were nominated for your leadership in creating the environment for change. I'm going to ask you to not be humble for a few minutes and give me what you think the best quality that you brought to the table was from a leadership perspective that allowed the change to happen. I'm going to leave this one open so we don't have to keep going in order. We can bounce around a bit. But Paul, I think you're ready to go. So why don't you tell me a little bit about
I wouldn't say I'm ready. The biggest thing, for me was just trusting every single person and allowing them to not just speak their mind, but not be afraid to speak their mind. And then, you hired those employees for a reason. They're working with you for a reason, and the biggest thing was, one, we were a team, and we were going to either be successful together or we were going to die together. I mean, that's really, at the end of it, what was going to happen. And you have to get every single one of those people on board. And Kim, who happens to be in the room with us here now, has made, numerous comments about it, and, so has Andrew. Like, the team that I started with, they would never tell me no. And that's really interesting when you get somebody who, they believe in what you're doing so much that they're not going to say no, but then it puts you in a really unique position because now you don't want to fail. And
they wouldn't tell you no in the sense that they would do anything you asked them to do.
Oh, yeah.
But did they challenge you?
Oh, every day.
Oh.
That's the good part about the team is not a single person came from healthcare. And so they would challenge everything. because they all had a unique way of doing things, and that challenge really is what delivered the best possible product. And for me, a product can be anything. A product can be employee morale. A product can be, patient care. It can be just company success. But those are all products, because every person that you work with is technically your customer. Every employee is your customer, and you need to treat them the same way that you want to treat your actual outside customer. And so, every single one of those people, they knew that what they did was going to directly affect their fellow employee, which was then directly going to affect the patient. And so you had to, let them challenge everything, because at the end of the day, our product became way beyond what we thought the scope was going to be, and so much better at the end. I mean, we ended up having to custom develop 3 applications because it just didn't exist for us, and didn't think that was going to happen. Initially, it was like, oh, we got this great idea, let's really change the way our employees work. And then when you figure out what your idea is, and then you start working backwards to figure out how to build it, then that's really where you have to kind of let people, do their own thing. Let them figure out the ways and bring them to the table. And so we had meetings, we had whiteboard walls, we have all this crazy stuff at the office, and it was a constant erase and rewrite, because you'd learn things, and we couldn't be afraid to just start over. And that first month was really tough, because we were trying to figure out how to do something that had never been done in our industry, and trying to figure out how to build something that didn't exist for our industry, because we're very unique. We're air ambulance, versus where, if you're in a hospital environment, there's thousands of hospitals, so there's thousands of people who want to sell you a product. You're in aerospace, there's thousands of people who want to sell you a product, because there's a lot of money in aerospace. We're air ambulance. Nobody wants to sell us a product because it doesn't exist for us, because we're such a small,
But each business is unique.
Yeah, so unique, yeah.
Every business is unique. What are the common traits? I've heard some as we've gone around the room. What are the common traits that leaders have to bring to the table, and that you thought that you had to bring to the table in order to affect the change?
You've got to build trust. I mean, you have to have trust that goes both ways. You have to empower staff, and you have to let them know it's okay to take a risk, and it's okay to fail. So otherwise, you're not going to be able to get out there on that innovation side if they don't take risks, and you let them fail and make those mistakes. And if they have to feel that it's safe. We've been doing this now for 5 years, and we came from where it was not safe to where now staff actually challenge the status quo. They actually feel that it's okay. We have a very open door policy in our administration. Our offices are actually in the hospital per se. We don't have a suite per se. We actually our offices are whatever space we can find, just like whatever space they can find. We're one of them. So they feel it's okay to walk into Dr. Trenchell's office and say, I have an idea. And he will sit down and listen to what that idea is. So, but then we ask you to present it. So if you have an idea for innovation, one of our big things, we will help you build a business plan.
What if the idea is really bad?
But you have to let them work through the idea. You have to give them the opportunity for them to say, you know what, this really isn't going to work.
Yeah.
But you don't know what a good idea is until you find out what the bad ideas are.
That's a good point. I mean, because I bring up a lot of bad ideas. 1 or 2 good ideas, but usually a lot of bad ideas. But I still want to be listened to, right?
Yes.
So-
Yeah, we didn't get where we're at without failing a bunch.
And
Yeah.
similar to Deb, you have to personality flex, right? My personality is starkly different than Paul's. But if I can't flex a little bit to his personality, I'll never learn his personality and be able to get to those tough questions. And so for us, similar to Deb, we need to have 100 bad ideas to get 1 good one.
Mm-hmm.
And if we have a culture that pushes back against bad ideas, we're never going to get those great ideas. And so for us, I've always said, I'll have 100 bad ideas, team. 1 will be good. Let's just keep throwing them on the wall. Let's see which one sticks. And then also lead by example. If I'm not willing to invest in my bad ideas, every good idea is good until it becomes bad. If I'm not willing to invest in those ideas, what does that say to my team when they have this idea in the back of their mind that might be a game changer for the company?
Yeah.
So we have to continue to invest in the people to allow them to make those audacious goals that are out there that are just an idea, and then put a process similar to what you said, Deb. In your organization, you have to put a process in place that allows a factory to work out a good idea, to good process, to good improvement, to good culture. And so for us, it was all about building that factory and that structure around our culture to challenge the status quo, like Paul said.
But Kathy, if you have bad ideas or challenges in an organization like yours, it becomes public. And so you probably have to watch. Is transparency just as important for you as it is for these guys?
That's a good question. We just don't deal with the bad ideas. No, I'm just totally kidding. I encourage the challenge also. I totally agree. You have to be transparent. You have to listen to people's ideas. I totally agree with that. But I think that we've done a good job of choosing a board of directors, community members, aligning ourselves with people that have some influence, but also are very supportive of trying new things.
So how do you get decisions made when you're dealing with all of this different type of infrastructure that you have to deal with?
So if we're looking at a new program, I actually ask our drivers, is there anybody interested in sitting on this team? And we sit with teams. We work in teams. And then we bring the whole idea out. And it works very well for us.
Any other qualities that are absolutely necessary? Tim?
For me, at Walbar, part of it's been me just being approachable. And to be honest, a big focus of our team, my senior management and my team's time, has been trying to make an environment that people want to work. I mean, I was an officer in the Army a long time ago, and I know a lot of people think about an Army experience as if, you're the boss, people do it.
Command and control.
Yeah, people do what you say, people do what you tell them to do. And I think what I learned pretty quickly is the only way to get sustainable change is to make someone want to do what you need them to do, and create an environment for, why that is. That was a lot of the focus at Walbar from the beginning. We spent a lot of time with the senior management team establishing core values, establishing our mission, establishing our vision. A lot of times in big public companies, they don't let people see financial performance. We spent a lot of time in the first year educating my operators on what a P&L means. How their spending on the line, how their productivity and efficiency can actually directly impact financial performance. And in year 2, we actually launched basically flow line P&Ls throughout the entire facility. So each month we have a review. Everybody knows why they missed, can explain it, and we could pivot and address it the next month. That didn't happen previously. There was a corporate finance team that kind of told the business what their results were each month. We talk daily about what happened yesterday and how it's going to impact the month if we don't do something differently. So I'm not just a guy that shows up, once a month, looks at reports and yells at people. I'm a guy that's, when I'm down there, a couple weeks a month, I'm walking the floor with people. I'm saying, we scrapped a part last week. Can you show me where it happened? Can you show me the equipment that the person's using? Do we need to buy? Do we need to buy new gloves? Do we need to buy a new deburr station? It's not, and fortunately, it's not just me doing that. It's like you said, lead by example. That's always been something that I think is incredibly important. Is if people see me down there interested in the details and willing to spend money to fix things, everybody starts to react like that. And it's been pretty infectious how the transformation and the change has happened in the organization.
Dealt with. There still seems to be a sense out there that the leader needs to be the smartest person in the room and stepping up. I'm seeing a lot of shaking heads when I say that. Of course, was being facetious. Anybody want to comment on that? Deb, are you the smartest person in the room every time?
Oh, no.
I think you are.
If you're smart, you surround yourself with smarter people than you. So one of the big things we did is we from healthcare, there's like you said earlier, there's a lot of hospitals out there. There's a lot of different ways to do things. But when they say, what are the best? What are the names that always come to mind? You hear the Cleveland Clinic, you hear Mayo. So one of the challenges we threw to staff is that, well, why not us? Why aren't we the best? Why do you think we're not the best? So we actually pulled public information about hospital injury, hospital patient injury, patient infections, and we put our numbers up and compared to them. And ours were actually better. So we said, so why not us? So now the motto is like, well, why not us? So now we have staff going out to, we want to be accredited in this. Okay, what resources do you need? So we want to be able to do this. What resources do you need? They want to be the best. So that's kind of like the incitement that you hear anymore. Why not us? So that's kind of where we're going now.
Yeah, my point is to have people around me who are much better executing than me, and I can just quote movies and talk about, things that and tell stories of leadership, things like that. So when you are moving an organization through change, you're going to go through highs and lows. How do you keep it? How do you keep that stability? How do you keep people engaged through that process? Anybody want to give an example of where that's happened for them?
So for Angel Medflight, every year we have something new happen, right? We create a plan, we do our budget planning process. Every single year we're going to have something that creates a speed bump for our operation. Now it's not necessarily that is a speed bump going to happen, it's how you respond to those speed bumps that really drive that lasting change in from our management team down to our associate level. And so for us, it's expect the unexpected, and then that's how you deal with those things. And so we've always tried to foster a culture that allows us to have mistakes, and we focus more on the response rather than the actual impact of them. And so that's allowed us to sort of get over those speed bumps and just know that there's more lines in the water, right? So if we make a mistake, we talk a lot about this in biz dev, is if you have more lines in the water, you catch more fish. If you only have one line, it's going to be devastating and it's going to hurt. So make sure you have more lines in the water, and make sure you know that we're human, we make mistakes. Back to your earlier question, you mentioned something about, how do you make sure you have good weaknesses and good positive things. I'm not good at a lot of things, right? In my office, I say mush cat videos every day. That's all I do. But I make sure that
Golden Retriever puppies.
Yeah, there's some cute ones, like those hybrid pets. So for me, it's making sure we surround ourselves with people that are excellent in their key areas, because I am weak in a lot of key areas. And Deb, you're a nurse, I'm not, but I will never, ever, ever question my director of clinical services. She's an ace. I know exactly that I can trust her, and that based off our mission, we'll be able to put a key team in place, similar to Paul and Kim on our biz dev team. We know that I can sort of sit back and then rely on them to drive the mission. We just have to make sure we have the framework that makes us successful. Similar, we have those bumps in the road that we just are going to expect. We just have to worry about how we respond rather than the event itself.
How do you make sure, and I think, Tim, this was, you said you made a commitment to your employees, right? And I think everybody here has that sense that you want to have that engagement from your employees and that trust built up among your organization. How do you know you have the right people in place?
Our plant, we actually have a Phoenix operation now, but our plant is in Guaymas, Mexico, which is about 4.5 hours south of the border. And it's not a big industrial hub. So to be honest, my big concern in the beginning, I thought what we accomplished in a year, I thought would take 3 to 5 years, because I thought we would have to rebuild the entire senior management team. But we went in thinking, if they're good, honest people that have technical competence, we're going to work with them to help them grow into their roles. And it's been pretty astounding. I mean, my head of quality, just as an example, the year before we took over, scrap was 6% of sales. The industry average is about 1.5 to 2% of sales. So scrap was 4 times the industry average. We gave her, we started taking away the noise. We gave her the time and the effort to turn the program around. Last year, she was recognized by Rolls-Royce as having the best quality program in their entire supply chain. This is a 3-year transformation. It's an unbelievable transformation. A lot of it was making sure she knew we had confidence in her abilities, making sure we got comfortable that she had the competency. But then taking away the noise, not having somebody panic about a number or some crazy thing that happened the day before and directing her or having that distract her from what she should be focused on. And what we've had her focused on is focus on creating sustainable change in the shop, not firefighting something that happened yesterday that's just a distraction. And I can give you countless examples of that, how the management team has risen above. I mean, of 8 senior managers, we only have 1 new one in the last 3 years. And that's because my former director of engineering left for another job. We brought in another guy that filled his shoes perfectly. And our customers now, again, 3 years ago, we didn't know what was going to happen. I joke around that when I moved to Phoenix 3 years ago, I had a month-to-month apartment because I wasn't sure what we were going to find. Since then, we bought a house.
Congratulations.
But it's been 3 years ago that people in the company didn't know if Walbar would have a future. But now, for the last 6 months, my engineering team has been sitting down with Rolls-Royce, helping them design their next engine. Again, this is 3 years ago. This is a small company in Mexico that the customers wanted to run from. Now we're helping Rolls-Royce design their next engine. It's pretty incredible.
That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. Are there times when you've had to manage people out or realize that you didn't have the right people in place?
Well, I think that happens all the time, but I think the whole point is also, it's not necessarily trying to manage them out. It's much more of like letting them recognize what skills they have and don't have, and maybe this isn't their best fit. So sometimes they stay in the organization, but we put them in the wrong job. So it's identifying what are your skills, but we can use you better over here than where you're currently at. So we try to focus on the employee first and then whatever to find out what their skills are and how they can best work for the organization before we manage out. And most of the time, I have to say, we've moved people around or they decided on their own, this is really not where I need to be.
Anybody else?
I think just given the resources, like you mentioned, Deb, I think is critical. You say this is the goal that we're trying to accomplish in each one of these roles. People self-select, right? They'll understand. I think you mentioned that you put some KPIs in front of somebody, like, this isn't for me. I was hoping I could find a different role, right? But for example of Paul, he was our CIO, and he was a fantastic CIO, still is. But he always had this passion to do something a little bit more. He always had his hand into marketing and in biz dev. And over the last year, since he's moved into his role, we've been featured with Verizon. Verizon came and did a spotlight of us. iPad for Business did a spotlight for us. VMware, for those in IT, did a spotlight on Paul. Salesforce Web Storage, Amazon Web Storage did all a feature. And so I think it's identifying, like you said, is putting the folks in the right positions to succeed. And Paul's a poster child for that. He was great at what he did, but now he's just an all-star in everything he did. And we have IT that continues to grow and evolve under his guidance. And so I think people self-select into the roles that they want. And as long as you put the structure and guidelines and stay black and white and not have that gray, people will come to the company and be successful. And those that don't want to follow by those guidelines and those guiding coalition that you create, they're going to self-select and move on.
I'd like you to think of, what were you going to say?
Go ahead.
Okay, I'd like you to think of one or two things that you learned from this process, either about yourself or about how you lead. And just share that with the group and feel free to build on each other. I'm going to reverse the order here. So Tim, I'd like you to tell me just what are some of the things that you learned from this process about your leadership style and your approach to making change and transformation?
Sure. I guess I'll contrast the last 3 years with the 10 years before. I was working for a private equity firm for 10 years, investing in aerospace machine shops. And I feel like in that 10-year period, I was not often living in the portfolio company for a year. So when I would focus on the portfolio company, I'd be laser focused on a couple really minute details of specific issues, and I kind of got comfortable there. And then I would go away for a month. And what I learned pretty quickly here is I needed to release myself from some of those details. I needed to find the right people, make sure we had the right level of communication, that I had the right, particularly in finance, that I had a finance team that was able to provide me with the data and the analysis that would help us kind of guide the company along the way. That was difficult for me. Particularly in the first 6 months, where it was a really fuzzy environment, but it was difficult for me to kind of let go of that a little bit. And start to intentionally take a more strategic view on the business and just trust in some of my team, particularly on the finance side.
Kathy?
I think what I learned is that a team is a whole lot stronger than a boss. I treat everybody like a team member, not an employee, and we go a lot further for that reason. In fact, 16,792 trips further. Sally's getting to the grocery store. People are using Uber and Lyft through our programs, are getting to the VA hospital from El Mirage, quite a trek, things like that. So we're helping the community, and as long as we're focusing on our vision and working as a team, we're doing a whole lot more.
So I think the big thing is learning that everyone does have a common purpose at the organization. They do want to take care of patients, and they want to do the right thing. So the big thing is allowing them to identify what the right thing is and allowing them to find that journey on their own and be supportive of that journey. You can't control everything, and that was difficult for me because this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to do it, we're going to get it done, and we're going to do it yesterday. So it doesn't work that way. So it's learning patience and learning to step back and let the team grow and let the team shine.
Yes.
I'm just like Deb. I'm 110% all the time. I had to learn how to take a step back and let those individual people that you hired to do a job really focus and do that job. And then your success is going to be so much stronger at the end. I kind of came into the organization at a unique time where, I was like 20-hour days, it was nonstop. And you got to learn how to take a step back because those people are there to do what they're, and then a lot of it was recognizing those people's individual strengths and then start giving them, assigning them responsibilities based on those individual strengths. And I had to learn all of that. And that was really tough because from my old team, I had worked with my old team for a very long time. I was at my previous company for 17 years. So I knew, how I had to learn a lot. And then I had to learn how to fail and how to, and I hate failing. I want to win every single time. And that's really tough. The minute you start learning how to fail and you start trusting your team, everything tremendously becomes better. The success of your team is going to be so much better. And then every single person, you can see the change. Like in the office, you could watch people, just immediately become more successful on their own because you started giving them those responsibilities and they had their own individual wins and that other person's excited for them. And so everybody starts becoming, so much better.
That's difficult because you have a vision of how you want something done, but you got to let people do it, and it might actually come out much different than you expected it to.
Absolutely. Yep, that was my thing. I was like, I have to have it like this, and it's like, oh, well, that's not going to happen. But then you realize that's so much better than what you originally thought was possible. And I talk about possibilities a lot when we're out on the road, and give people the possibility to change their own future. Change what you're doing. And we talk about giving our patients possibilities. It's the same with your employees. Give them a possibility to do anything that they want, and they're going to show you a better way to do it.
Don't forget to, like you said, recognizing those employees when they
Yep.
do that
Yeah.
great job, putting them
Yep.
in the spotlight and letting them be the one that shines. That makes a big deal.
No, absolutely.
I want credit for everything everybody does. If people are listening to this, I'm always being sarcastic. Okay.
So for me, it's just making sure I'm focusing on the right opportunities. I think over the years, similar to Paul, I would try to tackle on every single project, but once you really start Paretoing out the opportunity, you get your biggest bang for your buck if you focus on the big opportunities there. And you can sort of let go and let your team take charge and take lead on some things. That was very hard for me moving from like a COO type role into a president role. I was always the one to say, give me the shovel, let's go dig it. And then I have to sort of take a step back and say, okay, I trust that you guys can dig the hole. You guys got this. So that's always been very hard for me. So over the last few years, I've been able to sort of, with a lot of weeping in the shower, just get over some of those things, but just to trust in our team. And we've been very fortunate on ours to have some great people.
Very good. So we have a small audience here, and so I'd like to see if there's anybody who has a question from the audience.
I have a question.
Okay?
So I think we understand change can happen in any size organization. So I'm just curious about what you guys went through and just the size of your organization to put some perspective to it.
The question was your relative size to the change that you were going through. Tell us a little bit about the size of the organizations that you're in. And we'll go ahead and start here.
So for us, without giving revenue numbers, for us, we're probably the largest fixed wing air ambulance provider in the country. There's a lot of other mom and pop type companies out there. The rotor space is a lot larger, so you see a lot of things out there in the helicopter space. But we do just over 1,200 flights a year, roughly. And so for us, it's making sure we get those 100 or so flights each and every month right. So we have just under 100 employees for us.
Okay.
So we have over 2,000 employees, over 500 members of the medical staff. We have 1,500 volunteers, because we consider them our employees as well, our volunteers. So making change was huge on a big scale, because there's a lot of people to touch.
There's another aspect to Yuma Regional Medical Center is how far is the next nearest hospital that does what you do?
So we are unique that we're 150 miles east would be in Phoenix, and 150 miles west would be San Diego.
And otherwise, it's pretty
Otherwise-
barren territory out there. So you guys have to be good at what you do. You really don't have a choice for that community, do you?
Well, we're not a level 1 trauma center, but we are a level 1 trauma center, right? Because everyone comes there first, because that's what we have to do.
Yeah. I think else. Tell us a little bit
So
size.
Northwest Valley Connect has about 130 volunteers that works with it and 2 paid staff. So we also have an advisory committee, and Vice Mayor Roland Winters is here today from City of Surprise, and he's on our advisory committee, and he's also the person that nominated us.
He
I want to
is.
thank you.
Yep, and so, but I want to play on that a little bit because we didn't really touch on how difficult it's, like we said, it's difficult to drive change with employees. With volunteers,
It really
Yeah.
is a different world.
you have to motivate people differently, yeah?
Yeah, and in a lot of cases, it's easier to motivate them. In some cases, you know that you don't have any control. They're there because they want to be there. You have to make sure that they want to be there. So they have to buy into the mission and vision.
How do you do that? Because I've been there, I've had to manage volunteers before, but how do you do that? How do you keep them moving and how do you keep them coming back every day?
So you have to recognize what they're doing. They have to know that you value what they're doing. When we have a meeting, what we typically do is go around the room and everybody tells a little bit of a story about the people that they've touched. And it goes a long way. And I want to tell you a story if we have time. There was a volunteer. Thank you. There was a volunteer driver who came in and said, you know, I took, Sally goes to visit her husband. He's in a group home because she couldn't take care of him anymore and she's still living in her home. So she goes to visit him at the group home. And so the volunteer picked her up to take her over to the group home, and she said, can you take us to Arby's? We just really want to go to Arby's for lunch today. Could you take us? And he said, yeah, I don't have another pickup and I'll go ahead and take you. So he did. Then he took them back to the group home, and when she came out to go home, she said, thank you very much. That was really nice. It's our 50th anniversary.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's a great story, and now I'm thinking a lot about Arby's. Tim, you had started small, you're growing, you said you had grown 20
So
20 new people, yeah?
3 years ago, the company we acquired had 2 employees in Phoenix, 294 in Mexico, and myself and 2 other people were new to the team, new to the company. James Dixon, VP of Operations, and Fauna Bartlett, VP of Contracts. So just 3 new people. Today, we're 8 people and growing in Phoenix because we just 6 months ago opened up a new manufacturing facility in Chandler because we're doing so well. But some of the parts have to be made in the U.S. because of export and licensing requirements. So we're starting a U.S. Operation. And in Mexico today, we have about 350. It's an interesting story, the U.S. Growth plan, because under Goodrich and then United Technologies, they actually had 2 plants, one in Chandler and one in Tempe. They closed them, relocated all of the machines down to Mexico. So it's pretty neat to be bringing some work back.
That's great, that's great. Any other questions from the gallery? Bob?
I have a question. So you guys have talked a lot about about motivating your employees and the people around you and empowering them and allowing them to feel recognized and honored. I'm curious to see what motivates you to actually lead something like that.
That's a good question, because I actually had another question, which is, would you have done this again, knowing what you've been through? So what motivates you, and would you have done it again, knowing what you've gone through? So, guys?
For the first one, I would do it again, yeah, I would do it 2 times over, maybe 3 times. I mean,
So if you're looking for a CEO, no.
it was like, we started out something that was, I don't want to say the company was broken, but it was a very challenging time when I came into the organization. And then to get to see it, you know, flight volume wise, we're almost double in size of what we were doing when I started. And to get to see every person who works there's face and the way that they know they have ownership, the people are happy. We have a party planning committee, which really they just plan monthly things. They're gung-ho about it. They take it way overboard. I mean, we've got costume things, all the stuff that these employees do, and that didn't happen before. And to know that your employees are so excited to come to work every day and do something bigger than themselves, you know, and we literally change lives, and who doesn't want to be a part of that?
Yeah, I echo that. I think, Kathy, you mentioned the importance of the volunteers that you have working for you. They really understand and buy into that mission. Each and every day we have patients that we help. We take calls on our 24/7, 365 operations center of families that need to get not necessarily to the best level of care, but sometimes their next level of care. And so for us, we're always that silver lining to a really bad item that happened in their lives, where we're helping them get to that next phase of their life, whether it's rehab, whether it's a life-saving organ or transplant, or back to a hospice where they can, end their life with family and friends, and where they're happy in their old communities. And so for us, it's really rewarding because we get to deal with patients and family members that want to leverage a service like us, right? They don't require it, but they want to leverage someone like us to get to the next level of care. For us, our team always buys in on that too, because we can help change the status quo of healthcare, where geographic barriers are no longer there, because we're helping break those things down. So for us, it's the patient mission that really drives us to do the right thing.
Yeah, we've had everything from children receiving heart transplants to, mothers who are told that, or, the family member being told that the mom is not going to make it through the night, to making it, walking and talking. We have, a kid who crashed his bicycle, who was told he was never going to talk and possibly walk again, to he's on TV and rides a bike. I mean, stories that really make a difference, in these people's lives. So, who doesn't want to come to work every day?
You want to come to work every day, Deb?
Oh, I do love to come to work every day.
Well, so I'm not going to make any assumption. What motivates you? And by the way, would you go through, and I think this is an important question for you, would you go through this process again if you had to start over again?
Yes, I would.
Yeah.
Again, like I said, being a nurse, to me, people go into healthcare for a reason. It's not a job, it's a calling to do better. Hospitals are sometimes happy places when you have newborn babies, and sometimes they are not the happy places after the car accident, in the ICU, having to tell people bad news. So when you identify those people who are there for a reason, bringing passion back to why they're there, and allowing them to take care of people is just so important, and so great to see that they want to come back to work, and they love their job, and they love their patients, and you just can't say enough about that.
What's your motivation? Would you do it again?
Well, so I'm not going to say it wasn't hard, and that I haven't thought, well, what the heck did I do this for? But I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Yeah, it's been so far a good journey, and we have a lot farther to go, and we're helping people.
Yeah, I would absolutely do it again. What drives me, I love being a part of dramatic change like this. I mean, we talk down in Mexico, we talk about the Walbar family, and it really is a family feel. There's in some cases, my head of manufacturing, my plant manager is married to my head of materials. My new plant manager up here in Chandler, his sister-in-law is my head of quality. So it is a really family environment down there, and for a while, before we became independent, I think everybody saw the ship sinking and wasn't empowered to help change it. So I just love the first month of our ownership. People came to work not knowing who to trust, what to believe, and it's been completely different. I mean, people come to work engaged, fired up, and the customers feel it. So that's what drives me, just being a part of this kind of really dramatic change.
I'll tell you this, what drives me is the fact that my job means that I interact with people like you, and that I'm inspired by people like you every day, and that's the reason we did this award, is to inspire others, and to inspire people who want to create change, and help teach them how to do that, and how to lead change. So that's what I get to do, and I get to do it every day. That's what we do at MSS Business Transformation. We help companies who are going through this process learn from experience and get through that change however they do it. So we're going to end the podcast with that today. Thank you all for joining. We're going to be going on to the next steps. So join us again on Twitter. I'm looking at Jessica because she always reminds me of this. We are on Twitter at MSS Business Transformation. We're on LinkedIn. And you can find us at mssbta.com or mssbti.com for our Institute site, where you can learn about these folks and other people like them and how to drive your own change. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you.